Hey everyone, welcome to the show. And today we're off to Boston to meet a sophomore at BU, Boston University, Alok Ranpise. Hey Alok, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Okay Alok, this wonderful university that you go to, and would you like to tell us what were some of the reasons that helped you choose to study there?
When I first decided to start looking at colleges, I was very conscious that I wanted to go to a college inside a big city and not necessarily in a very rural or a small town kind of location. Because I've been to boarding school before for about 7 years. And that was in a really rural location, so I enjoyed it, but I didn't want to go back to that kind of setting again. So all my colleges were in like LA and Boston and other places in Canada which I applied to. Then I'd actually never been to Boston before.
Oh, I see.
But from what I heard, everyone said it was full of students, which is true. It's right by the Charles River, and it's got a lot of trees. It's based on this big main road that goes out of Boston, all the way out of Boston, and it's got some parks along the way. And it's not very urban. Like, it's not in part of the financial district. So the buildings are like these brick buildings, which will be about 4 to 5 stories tall. And you can spend most of your time just by the river studying. All the buildings, I think, are meant to take advantage of the location. So the ones that are further away from the river are taller so that you can see the river. Because I think Boston's not so big of a city, you can easily get around to each district of the city to eat at different locations and go out at different locations. I think the most popular among students is the North End district, which has it's mostly these family-run, relatively cheap Italian restaurants. But there's a lot of students who go there, and since it's Italian, it's not that expensive, but people dress well, and students dress well when they go there.
Which is good to hear, because Boston is like all expensive cities. It's good to have these options which are family-run and slightly... Talking about the dorms, you mentioned some of your dorms which are multi-story. I hear you've got fantastic dorms, large housing accommodation for students.
As you know, the college promises accommodation to all our students for all 4 years. If they want it, you don't have to live on campus. And 2 of our most famous dorms, they're called the student villages. They're the slightly pricier dorms, but they're like some of the more famous dorms, like I think in the country. Because the suites there, it's like skyscrapers that are right next to the Charles River. So you get a view actually of the entire river and it opening up into sea. And so it's since it's near Fenway Park, we have a lot of restaurants there, and the entire crowd that comes to see the baseball games during the season, they're always there. So it's always a very bustling area full of places to eat and these little bowling alleys and shops and things like that.
Sounds wonderful. Alok, for an incoming freshman looking to come to BU, what would you say really stands out about your school?
I think though BU is not in that high in the overall rankings for colleges, we do have a very good pre-med and biology programs. And I also believe we have a big, like a new business school that's been getting a lot of funding because it has the new ownership and things like that.
It's an undergrad and a grad school?
I believe it has a really good MBA program as well. And the third, I believe the law program for after your undergraduate at BU is also quite well known. We have a new law annex which looks quite nice and overlooks the everything overlooks the Charles River. But it's a really nice building, and it's brand new. So I'd say that that's something that people could look at.
And the startup culture around Boston, does that help your college as well?
I think, when I was applying as a computer science student, I didn't know whether BU was that well known for computer science. But when I went there, the amount of students I found who already worked in like many programming groups of their own and done amazing projects during high school, there was a really talented group of students I was studying with in the computer science group. That's maybe part of why I felt so unsuited to the major. But also, I think it's important to note that since Boston has such a great number of colleges and so many young students graduating in engineering and software fields every year, a lot of companies are starting to relocate to Boston, tech companies and startups for software and mobile apps, things like that. So it's if you're someone who's looking to work in software, I think it's a great place to be starting now.
So you don't need to look at Silicon Valley or Seattle all
Maybe
the time.
Maybe in a few years, like Boston, I think it could get there.
Probably getting there. So Alok, with your majors, I believe you changed a major somewhere in the freshman to sophomore year. How was that experience for you?
Well, I started out college not really with a decided major, but I was pretty sure that I wanted to take computer science because it was something that was popular among my friends both at high school over here. And I was good at high school computer science. I thought I was performing well. And I was interested in video game design, chiefly as something I wanted to do in the future. So when I went to college, I found that a lot of people are there who do well in the subject and they really enjoy it. I'm sure it's a great major. But I realized it wasn't really for me. My personal interests in video game design were more on the design or storytelling part rather than the coding and software part.
Okay.
So the computer science angle to it didn't really jive with me.
Sure.
So sometime towards the end of my first year, I decided I wanted to change major, and I'd been taking an elective which was Introduction to International Relations, which it's kind of like a cross-disciplinary major, I feel sometimes, because it combines economics, political science, some sociology, a lot of history. So I really liked that. So by the end of my first year, I decided to switch to an international relations major with a focus on Asian politics and culture. So I'm also doing minors in economics and Asian culture now to supplement my major. And it was really easy to switch actually because, but of course they made me sit down with them and explain my reasons for wanting to switch and made sure I was not doing this on a whim just because I was finding my computer science stuff. I had to take a couple of 2 weeks to convince them to let me switch and endorse my change. So I decided to do a study abroad in my summer right after first year.
Okay, how interesting.
It was fun. And I went to Seoul in South Korea.
Wow.
And I went to a college there called Seoul National University, which is a really beautiful college right in the heart of Seoul.
Okay.
But it's located such that it's in the middle of two hills in the city. So since this college, it's called SNU in short, it's really famous for international relations in the country. Like Ban Ki-moon was an alum of this college.
Oh, okay.
So I went there primarily to study about U.S. foreign policy and diplomacy between North Korea and South Korea. And my professors there one was a former foreign minister of the country, and the others were congressional research service workers in the U.S. or people who'd worked in the CIA.
Fabulous.
Things like that.
Fantastic. I think that's a great. So you're planning another. Are you planning another?
I'm thinking of doing one that's now a BU run one. This one's it has 4 weeks in Geneva and 4 weeks in London, and it's run by BU professors in these cities, and it's more about their local histories and conflict resolution is the overall theme. So it'll cover conflicts like in Ireland or even in Kashmir or in Sudan, and basically cover the process that diplomats and world leaders go through to get the warring factions together and resolve these problems.
Wanting to do a major in IR, would you recommend a high school student actually go through a history program?
I think it would be helpful because personally I didn't have that big of a history background when I switched in, and I tried to make up for it by reading as many books as I could on the subject and just reading stuff on the internet. But I think doing history in high school would give you an advantage. But I think IR is something which I didn't really know existed before college.
Sure.
So even the colleges are somewhat, they know this, that it's not something that not all high schools make you look into it.
Absolutely.
So they do a good job of introducing the major to you, and the advisors know that you're not someone who's already going to be good at the subject.
Okay, so for an international student, perhaps coming to the US for the first time and coming to BU, what do you think they should keep in mind?
I think something that a lot of my cousins who've already studied abroad warn me about is that it's important to have Indian friends because you'll be happier if you have that rooting back home with these friends who you can speak about home with. But a lot of students who I've met don't socialize a lot outside these circles. And I think then you're missing out on one of the greatest opportunities in college. Because you never know, you might come back to India after you graduate, and you don't know when you might work abroad after that. And this is the best time to make friends who are from different cultures, from different cities around the world.
Right.
So you'll have that exposure to people who think differently to you, have very different political views. And so it's an opportunity you shouldn't let go to waste.
Absolutely. What would you say if you were to describe your school in one word? What would you say?
Oh, I mean, this might not always be a good word, but I'd call it busy. And for me, that's a good thing because in college, I'm spending most of my time doing things like doing work, either it's schoolwork or like I'm working with the other students on extracurricular activities or projects, research projects mainly for classes. And I like the fact that I don't have too much time to just waste. I'm always busy with something to do, and there's always stuff to do on campus. Like we probably have like dozens of extracurricular groups which allow any freshman to join when he wants. And so there's always stuff going on from early in the morning till probably midnight or past that.
Wow.
Well, I think until last year, BU's dorms used to shut in the bricks.
Okay.
So naturally you have to find another place to live. But my favorite thing was that since the canteen shut, I kind of had an excuse to just go out in the city and find a new place to eat every meal.
Okay.
So I opened Yelp, which is like this food finding app, and I basically every meal I just go to like the restaurant that sounded the best and try different foods and different cuisines.
Wow.
And I feel like I probably sampled maybe more than a dozen restaurants around Boston in that period.
So which one was your favorite?
One of my favorites, which like a friend introduced me to recently during one of these breaks, was an Italian restaurant in North End called Trattoria Il Panino. And it's like in North End, so it's pretty cheap, and you get, I love most of the dishes there.
Okay, so thank you so much, Alok, for being on the show. I think you've given us a fantastic overview of BU.
Thank you so much.
And for anyone wanting to come in, I think you've answered most of the questions. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Please click the subscribe button below. Like me at facebook.com/ChetChat101. Follow my Twitter handle, ChetChat101. or at Instagram, ChetChat101. Please leave your comments in the sections below. And if you'd like me to feature any particular college, please let me know. Thank you.